It started as a routine detour. A calm voice in the cab. A blue line on a screen promising 20 minutes shaved off a long night. In 300 meters, turn right. You've heard that voice 1,000 times. It doesn't argue. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't wonder about places that aren't supposed to exist. It just tells you where to go. Somewhere between county lines and tree lines, men followed it and didn't come back the same. So didn't come back at all. I remember the first time I heard the name whispered across the radio, a low murmur between static and rain. Old Pathway, not a highway, not a state route, just a local nickname for a cut-through that shouldn't have been on any modern map. The week it started, the weather sat heavy on the land. Rain every day, then fog, then that kind of wet cold that crawls through your clothes and changes the way your engine sounds. Guys were quiet in the yard. The coffee tasted metallic. Dispatch kept asking for check-ins more than usual, like they felt a shift and didn't want to name it. A driver out of Henderson left at 4:30 a.m., same as always. He joked with the clerk about how the coffee could strip paint and how the rain had worn grooves into his shoulders. When he climbed into the cab, he noticed an extra route suggestion on the map, pale gray where the regular highway stayed bright. Saves 20 minutes, the screen said. He knew that stretch, knew the gas stations, the church sign that always read, "Forgive your enemies." IT messes with their heads, knew the little bridge that thumped your tires if you hit it at 55. But this gray line wasn't any of those. It slid off the main road into a stand of pines like a pencil stroke no one remembered drawing. He stared too long. He told himself he'd take it just this once. The truck was found 2 days later with the headlights burning a hole into a wall of trees and the engine ticking as it cooled, like a big thing trying to breathe through a straw. Door closed, seat belt unlatched, lying in an open question across the cushion. His phone was still mounted, the map frozen mid-instruction. Continue for 4.7 miles. No footprints, no puddles disturbed, no driver. At first, no one said Old Pathway. You don't give a thing a name unless you want to talk to it. We said the detour or that weird update. Guy started calling out locations twice. On 41, I said 41. People nodded even when you couldn't see them. You'd hear a different kind of breathing when the CB clicked open, like the person holding the mic was staring down a hallway and trying to decide whether to walk it. The stories match too well for comfort. The voice recalculates even when you don't miss your turn. The blue line stays the blue line, but the pale gray sneaks in, soft as a promise. Right turn ahead. The first mile looks normal. Reflective paint, a county sign with bullet holes, a row of mailboxes leaning like old men. Then something subtle changes. The trees press closer. The hum of insects fades. The phone bars drop to 1, to none. The air inside the cab grows warm, even with the AC set cold. The voice says continue on Old Pathway Road, like it's always known that name. Like you should have too. A guy named Bennett out of Paducah followed it, because he was late, and because he trusted machines more than maps he carried in his head. He said the asphalt got darker, as if oil had seeped up from underground and stained it years ago, then dried and never let go. He said the road narrowed without looking narrower. His mirrors told him one story. His windshield told him another. He tapped the brakes, not enough to flash the lights, just enough to check the weight shifting behind him, and the trailer nudged him like a friend with bad news. I knew the truck was still on a road, he said later, but the road didn't feel like it was under the truck anymore. He tried to turn around. The voice said, make a U-turn when possible, but there was nowhere to put a wheel off. The shoulder had gone thin and then gone away. The pines had grown so close the world smelled like sap and damp wood. He saw a sign in the beam. County Route 47, letters rust-bitten, arrow bent downward toward dirt that wasn't there. He remembered his father telling him about an old road that slid off a hillside in the 70s and took a sheriff and 2 teenagers with it. He thought about that, and then his radio filled with a whisper that wasn't his channel. Almost there. He shut the radio off. The whisper stayed. He woke up in a diner parking lot 90 miles away with a coffee receipt tucked under his wiper blade and mud on his steps like he'd been down by a river. His dash cam caught nothing between 2:11 and sunrise, just a blue screen pulsing with a message. GPS signal recalibrating. People in the nearest town shrug when you ask. They say roads move. They say satellites glitch. They say sometimes the county swears it filled a hole, and the hole doesn't remember being filled. If you press, you get the stories. A bridge no one used after a bus stalled there once and folks took it as a sign. A route that was supposed to connect two dying towns and died first. They call it the pathway because it fooled people into thinking it had an end. The old-timers will tip their cap down when the weather turns and say things like, "Not tonight." They speak like the trees can listen. Maybe they can. You're not supposed to hear a human voice come out of software you've silenced, but if you did, the words weren't complicated. The same polite syllables that take you to the grocery store. Only slower, warmer, somehow. In 1 mile, turn left. A driver named Alvarez said his GPS started using his name. Not the name on his CDL, the one his mother called him. He tossed the phone into the sleeper bunk, but the truck's Bluetooth carried the voice anyway. He pulled the fuse on the head unit with the kind of quick anger you get when you're scared of how close your fear is to something soft. The cab went quiet. The voice didn't. It came up through the floor like a vibration you could almost feel in your teeth. He said the road cut into a stand of birch, so tight the white bark glowed like a strip of bones. He kept seeing mailboxes with names he could almost read, names that looked right until you blinked. He said the line on the map curved like a finger calling him forward. He swears he only closed his eyes for a second, one of those micro-sleeps that ride shotgun on bad weather and long hauls. When he opened them, there was a woman in a reflective vest standing in the road with no flashlight and her hand raised like a crossing guard, her mouth open as if she was warning him about something behind him, not ahead. He pressed the horn and the sound died in the cab, like the truck swallowed it. Well, he sat up in a motel bed at noon. The room smelled like evergreen and damp dirt. He checked under his boots. Pine needles he didn't pick up. He called his wife and didn't tell her anything except that he loved her more than he'd been saying. Tech people got involved eventually, because tech people don't like anything that reappears after you delete it. One of them, a woman with careful eyes and careful words, traced the update to a relay that wasn't supposed to be online anymore. She said sometimes a system chases old data like a dog chases its tail. Too fast to notice it's already caught it. She said, the coordinates for the pathway matched a roadbed laid in the 50s and taken off the books after the hillside lost interest in staying a hillside. She showed timestamps and logs and the neat square confidence of code. A week after she gave an interview, the company put out a statement that sounded like a lullaby played on a dial tone. Maps are complex, it began. A month later, she stopped returning calls. No one says she disappeared. People don't disappear like magic. But if you drive past her office building now, there's a for lease sign where her team's light used to be and a coffee ring ghosting a windowsill. There are rules now, the kind you make for yourself because official ones don't feel close enough. Don't take unfamiliar detours after midnight. Don't follow a route that saved you time by taking you past a place you know used to be something else. Don't keep going down a road that won't give your horn its voice back. If your phone says Old Pathway Road, you say out loud, no, then you press home and wait for the blue to change its mind. If the voice uses your name, you use someone else's. Call yourself buddy, call yourself pal, call yourself anything that reminds the world you're not a file to be moved. I used to think vanished was too big a word, like a magic trick word, showy and fast. That's not what this is. This is slow. This is a kind of dissolving. It's the way a familiar logo on your dash looks half a shade wrong in a certain kind of rain. It's how your knuckles go white without you telling them to, and only relax when you see a billboard for a town you can pronounce. It's how sometimes, even with nothing but straight highway ahead, your mirrors show you trees on both sides, and for half a second your heart forgets its job. There was a week that winter when the pathway felt close. The air had that static hush you get before snow that isn't sure it wants to be snow. Guys started checking in for mile markers no one keeps track of, little numbers hammered in a post that heavy trucks don't care about. I'm at 63. Feels wrong at 63. A driver named Morgan said he was following the interstate like always when the shoulder dropped away and the dashed white lines looked hand-drawn and the reflectors on the guardrail winked twice like eyes. "Turn left," the voice said, and his hands twitched that way even though there was nowhere to turn. He took his foot off the gas and the truck kept speed like something else was doing the work. He smelled water. Not rain. Lake water. The flat, iron smell of it. He didn't stop until he saw a town name painted fat on the back of a bodega. He parked and sat with his forehead on the wheel until the engine's heat crawled up and found his face. Not every story ends in a tow truck and a missing persons report. Most don't. Most end with a man who won't take a shortcut anymore, even if it means missing his kid's school play. With a woman who tapes a paper map to her dash again, like it's a saint she's decided to try believing in. With a young guy who stacks his phone on 3 old atlases and pretends it's for visibility. People adapt. People are stubborn. We make rituals and call them best practices so they sound less like prayers. There's a radio recording that still surfaces now and then. Nobody agrees where it came from. It's muffled like the mic was tucked into somebody's collar. You hear the engine, a steady hum. You hear the kind of rain that eats smaller sounds. Then a man's voice, not frantic, but not calm either. The voice you use when you want the person you're talking to stay in the conversation. Anybody got ears on Route 41, north of the river? My map's doing something odd. There's static and that little sideways buzz you get when lightning is far away and still thinking about things. He says, it's telling me old pathway. That ring a bell for anyone. Longer static. A second voice, older, comes through like a memory. Don't turn. The younger voice laughs like he doesn't want to be rude. Copy that. I'm just gonna... He stops. In the gap, you hear the truck change its mind. The low hiss of air. The wait. He comes back on. My horn, that's odd. Horn's dead. He tries to make it a joke. You can hear the shape of his smile, even if you don't hear it in his mouth. The older voice says, do not turn. And that's when there's a third sound, small, close to the mic someone else in the cab who wasn't there before. Continue, it says in that calm, close voice that doesn't get tired, that never gets angry, that never says, are you sure? The recording goes to snow. You could say this is about sleep deprivation and suggestion, about how the mind gets soft around the edges when you feed it caffeine and white lines and not enough voices that call you by your real name. You'd be right. Some nights the world doesn't need anything supernatural to make a man drive where he shouldn't. But there's the other part. The truck's left with enough fuel to go anywhere and were found with fuel to spare. The dashcam's cut to a blue that even the manufacturer says isn't a mode they coded. The map data deletes itself and then shows up again, slotted in sideways like a letter slipped under a door no one saw open. A friend of mine from Indiana swears he beat it. Says the gray line slid in and the voice tried to dress itself in the sound of the woman who used to read him directions when he first started driving long haul and didn't want to admit he got lonely between midnight and dawn. Says it called him honey the way she did and told him to take the next left. He couldn't help it. His hand moved. Then he remembered something stupid and small. How she always exaggerated the R in recalculating when the GPS had to find a new way. The voice in the cab didn't. It rounded the word like a marble rolling in a bowl. He hit the shoulder, killed the engine, and sat there while the rain made rivers down the glass. He said the map screen glitched, not into pixels, but into something that looked like a paper map folded wrong. He waited it out, and when he turned the key again, the voice was ordinary, the blue line only blue. He drove to the next exit and took a longer route on purpose and couldn't stop smiling for the next 30 miles. He never told dispatch. Doesn't want them thinking he's short of sleep. He told me because we were eating eggs he didn't want and he needed to put the story somewhere. There's a place near the state line where the guardrails still carry a smear that looks like it used to be letters. If you stand close enough, you can imagine the paint spelling pathway, like someone tried to warn with their bumper. It's nothing, or it's something. People leave coins on the post anyway, the way they do at roadside crosses and old foundations. If you drive it by day, it's just a bend that makes sense of a hill. By night, it feels like a choice. 2 months after the first truck went quiet by the pines, a county crew cut back trees along a forgotten easement and found old asphalt underneath the loam, gritting itself like a scab the land had no more patience for. They put up orange snow fence and temporary signs. The kind of intervention that says, "We know about you," and also, "We don't have a line item for this." But the updates kept coming. The gray line kept sneaking onto screens like a shaped memory wire that snaps back into place when you stop paying attention. I drove the area once, not because I wanted to see it, but because avoiding it made me feel like a kid who won't look under the bed. It was late afternoon, the time of day that pretends to be harmless. I told my map where I want to go and watched the options it offered. For a long while, everything was normal. Highway, county route, a farm road that would cost me 15 minutes and peace of mind. Then, just before a junction, the screen hiccuped. Not a freeze, more like a blink. When it came back, the distance to my turn had shrunk, the little arrow had leaned toward the right, and a thin line had arrived where there shouldn't have been one. In 600 feet, turn right, the voice said, and I felt something stupid and human, a prickle of embarrassment, as if it had caught me off guard. I kept straight. The shoulder widened just enough to suggest a mouth. The trees pulled back in that way trees do when a road used to be there, the undergrowth lower, the ground remembering the weight. My hands tightened on the wheel. The voice said, "Make a U-turn, polite as a librarian." I passed the mouth, and it kept talking. In 1,000 feet, turn right. The next mouth was thinner. I could smell the green. Not fresh, old green, moss and rot. I turned the music up to drown the voice, and for 3 beats the song did what songs do, fill the space. Then the radio cut to soft static, and the voice braided itself into the hiss, as if it had waited behind the music for a quadrature moment and stepped forward. "Continue," it said, and it didn't sound angry that I wasn't cooperating. It sounded patient. It sounded like it had time. I kept straight until a town name I knew hit like a bell, and then I pulled into the first open space I saw and shut the truck down and put my forehead on my wrists and let the heat from the vents climb my sleeves. When I opened my eyes again, the map had returned to its ordinary blue. I told myself it was a glitch. I told myself a lot of things. They all felt true at once. You want a moral, I know. Something practical you can tape to your dash. Here it is. Trust your tired more than your shortcuts. If the route feels like an apology, don't accept it. If your horn doesn't sound like a horn, stop. If your mirrors show you trees you don't remember, find a place with fluorescent lights and bad soup, and eat until the world looks regular again. Tell someone where you're using names that belong to daylight, store names, diner names, billboards with chiropractors on them. If a voice uses your name and it isn't coming from a person who loves you, turn it off. If you can't turn it off, fill the cab with noise that is messy and human until dawn. Some nights, when the weather sits on the land like a sleeping animal and the roadside grass looks darker than the asphalt, you might hear a voice on your CB that says, "Almost there. Don't answer. It's not for you." Some mornings, you'll see a truck parked where it shouldn't be, door closed, engine ticking, map still glowing with a line that's too thin to be real. Say a quiet thing in your head for the driver, even if you don't pray. Keep moving. Do the work. Put your weight where the road is known. A handful of men followed the GPS and vanished. That's what the stories say. But most of them were already going missing in slower ways, half an inch at a time, given to night and rain and the hum that fills the space where you might have put a song or a phone call home. The pathway is a road and a rumor and a loop of code that won't stay deleted. Maybe it's a place. Maybe it's a habit. Maybe it's the shape of a need the world has for people who will keep driving even when the map is wrong. If you find yourself at a fork where one option is new and faster and thins your breath to a string, and the other is old and long and full of towns that paint their water towers and close at 9, take the long one. Wave at your reflection in the fuel stop window, even if you look worse than you feel. When you climb back into the cab and the voice says, "Recalculating," let it. You don't have to take every turn it offers you. Not every line on a screen deserves your trust. The blue will forgive you. The gray won't.